Hello, and a very warm welcome to another podcast. Well, now, how are you feeling? We are emerging, aren't we? And much cause for celebration in some ways. I think it was rather chastening the other day when we commemorated a whole year in lockdown. But the signs are reasonable that we're emerging from this and the restrictions are being eased, and so you would think it'd all be hunky-dory, but of course people are anxious, and if you're anxious I want to reassure you that you're certainly not alone. And certainly, I mean, amongst my own friends and indeed amongst my coaching clients, I'm aware of quite a level of anxiety about new beginnings. And I think that um, this is entirely natural, and also for some people that perhaps found some things difficult before, like they were socially anxious in groups, or they weren't always that happy in the office. It's quite important to recognize that, well, those things haven't gone away, and now perhaps you're going back to work 3 days a week instead of doing it all from home, and this is something to be negotiated. But I do think it's important to remember that although it seems like a very, very long time since we had what we think of as normal life, however old you are, you've only actually been your pandemic self, shall we say, for just over a year. So in my case, I'm almost 74. So I really was my pre pandemic self for almost 73 years. I've got the weight of history on my side, really, of being able to return to the person that I was, because I've only been the pandemic Christine Weber for 12, 13 months, and I think that's something to remember. And just it's just common sense, isn't it, really? But I think it is something to remember. But I do think that there may be issues with you going back to work and everything, or traveling, or being in crowds, and it will take time to adjust. But the sort of anxieties people are having, and some of them are losing sleep over it, are things like, will everybody think I've aged? Will they think I'm not the guy I was? Will they think, oh, she hasn't weathered very well? Um, and again, it's natural, I think, to think those things. But really, most people, I think, are going to be pretty preoccupied with themselves. I don't think they're going to be wasting much time, kind of summing you up and deciding that you are not coping well. So I don't think you really want to worry about that too much, although I understand that it's a worry. But one thing I would suggest to you, and there's a whole podcast on self-esteem somewhere in the 24, which you could probably find on my website. And in the self-esteem one, I did actually suggest that you write 50 things you like about yourself and keep adding to it. You've got 50, and then regularly read this. And that would be a very good thing to do, I think, at the present time, just to remind you of what your skills are, what your talents are, what your characteristics are. And just remind yourself that, yes, you are a good organizer. Yes, people like you, all those sort of things. Just do that as a little exercise, and I think it will really benefit you. So just remember, you were your pre-pandemic self long before you were your pandemic self. Just remember that loads of people are anxious at the moment. Just remember what your skills are, and begin to look forward with some happy anticipation at all the things that we've so badly missed. And I think that will stand us in very good stead. Finally, a client said to me the other day, oh, I've lost a year out of my life. It's been a waste. It's been a waste of time. I don't honestly think that any time we spend on this earth is a waste of time. And I do believe that very many of us have learned a lot of skills that we really didn't know we had. And it might just be you can make a cake from scratch. It might just be how much you enjoy walking, which you never did before. It might be that you've decided you're in the wrong career, you've decided to make some changes. It might be you've decided you're in the wrong relationship. It might be that you've just learned much more about just being, enjoying bird song, enjoying sunshine, not having to perhaps go out every Saturday night or you feel a failure. So we have learned a lot about ourselves, and before all this changes, I think it'd be a really good idea to make a record of how we've changed and what perhaps we think are actually improvements in our lives, and to recognise what we've achieved this year rather than write it off, well, that was a waste of time. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure there are things about it that you're going to value and look back on and think, I wouldn't have learned that had it not been for the pandemic. I wouldn't have learned it, and I'm very glad that I did. So let's have a think about that, the value of the last year, while we celebrate the fact that we're gradually coming out of it and we can meet our nearest and dearest, and best of all, we can have a hug, or quite a lot of hugs. I'll see you next time.